Saddam Hussein's trial for crimes against humanity opened Wednesday in Baghdad. The first case being brought against the former Iraqi leader deals with the retaliation for an assassination attempt against him in 1982. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. Here's a look at 45 minutes of the proceedings, with testimony by Saddam Hussein.
In the name of Allah, the merciful, the compassionate, those who fought in God's cause will be victorious. I'm at the mercy of God, the most powerful. We need to hear your identity, your name. We're here to record your identity. Please, your name, your two middle names. Mr. Saddam, we are at this point asking you to give us your identity, your name, your two middle names, your last name, your profession, and your address, and then we give you a chance to talk. Now it is time to ascertain your identity, so if you please. I would have loved not to impose on you too much. You seem to have a terrific judicial temperament. However, as for the rest, the rest of the world knows about it. Mr. Saddam, we're asking that you give us your identity, please. Your name and your last name. And then, at the appropriate time, we will hear from you. At this point, we are recording the identities. That's all we're doing. It is part of the procedures, the formal procedures of this court. Who are you and what are you? I have to know, because as you know, whoever knocks on the door needs to say who they are. We are Supreme Iraqi Criminal Tribunal. Were you a judge before? Please. Now it's time to state your identity, but at some point we'll give you a chance to state your opinions and say what you want to say, either in a written form or orally, but we don't have time to delve into these details right now. You know, I've been here since 2:30 in the morning. Well, if you're tired, why don't you state your identity and then sit down? And since 9 o'clock, they've been asking me to take my clothes off and then to put them back on. Okay, so if you were in arrest, why don't you give us your identity, sir, and then you just sit down? Well, you know me. You know who I am. If you're Iraqi, and evidently from your accent you sound like you are, you know who I am. Why don't you give us your identity and then sit down, please, so that someone else could stand up and give us their identity. Well, I sent you something written to that effect already, so you know exactly who I am. This is a formality that the court must follow. These are simple formalities that we need to obey. Well, I answered these questions in a written form. But now you don't want me to give you my identity while you deny me the right to have a pen and a piece of paper? Well, I harbor no hatred towards any one of you. However, out of attachment to what is right and out of respect for the trust of the Iraqi people who choose me as president, I decline to answer your question, and I decline to respond to your request as part of this body that is called a court. And I would like to reserve my constitutional right as president of Iraq. Well, these things you can talk about them at the appropriate time. Now is not the time to talk about these issues. Well, I just wanted to comment about your request to state my identity. Well, as you know, even if I know you, the judge is obligated to make sure they ascertain the identity of the accused. I don't recognize either the authority that put you in that seat or the aggression, because what is based on falsehood is falsehood. So you don't want to give us your identity? Please sit down then. Sit down. Mr. Awad. Identity, please. My identity is my headscarf. They took it from me, therefore they took my identity. Oh, just give us your name. Just your name. Well, you know, I'm an Arab, and the headscarf is part of who I am, and that's my identity. That's what I'm telling you. Who took it away from you? Well, it's the court. It's your court. Somebody in your court. Okay. Where's his headscarf? Bring him his headscarf. All of them. Bring the headscarf to all of them. Now, this is not a decision that was taken consistent with a court's order. They took them away from us at the investigative level. When you attend this court, you can attend it in any clothing and any outfit you want. You're free to wear your headscarf. You can wear anything that is decorous in this court. Well, they took them away. They took them away from us at the investigative level. Well, that's wrong. That's wrong. We'll give them a chance to put on their headscarves. In the meantime, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
منطقة الدجيل وكانوا من العاملين في الحزب إبان وقوع حادثة الدجيل، وهم أيضا متهمون بالتورط بمساعدة السلطات العراقية على تنفيذ تلك المجزرة.
Go ahead, sir. In the name of Allah, the merciful, the compassionate. On the day of final judgment, those whose hands committed evil deeds will know it. Honorable judges of this honorable court, Today is a historic day indeed, a day that the Iraqi people and people of conscience around the world have waited for such a long time. They have waited to see you deliver justice against those who committed the odious crimes against humanity. Murder, bloodshed, displacement, starvation, torture, pillaging, unlawful expropriation, desecration of people's honor, raping of women, denying of basic freedoms, reassignment of ethnicities, forced relocation and exile, all manner of humiliation of the Iraqi human being, arbitrary incarceration, and so on and so forth. I'm sorry. You're being insensitive. Insensitive, Your Honor? I'm not being insensitive. I'm talking about crimes that have been committed and that have been documented. More than 2 million of our people have been killed, either in wars or because they have been accused of belonging to parties that are hostile to the regime, or because they have been accused of conspiring against the authority or attacking the government. These happened based on the Article 226 of the Criminal Code, which represented the sword that was laid on the neck of the Iraqi people. An article and a law that was unique in Iraq and didn't exist anywhere else in the world. It was the law that muzzled the Iraqi people and prevented them from voicing their opposition to enslavement and to repression. Every one of our people who voiced opposition to injustice was killed by the executioners of the Revolutionary Tribunal. Thus, Iraq, a country and a people, went through a nightmare from 1968 all the way to April 4th, 2003. We lived with a regime that was unique in the history of mankind. A regime unique in its philosophy and morality, unmatched in its brutality and repression against the people. This regime was based on lies, based on force, and based on money. Its policy was based on murdering anyone who opposed the regime or was accused of opposing the regime. Briberies and expropriations and false promises were the hallmarks of that regime, which created and fabricated economic crisis in order to detract the people and to deny him its basic rights. The regime targeted all the brilliant people in our people because the regime was afraid of these people. He arrested them, he drove them out of the country, be they religious people or political opponents. And these crimes, they targeted mainly our Kurdish brothers, who lost thousands of their people to illegal weapons. The Kurds were driven out of Kurdistan and were killed and exterminated. This will remain a shameful scar on the regime's forehead. What happened to our resilient people at the hands of this regime? A regime that recorded unmatched crimes in their brutality in the world, in the history of mankind. Even their own people were not spared, and we have documents to prove that. And after all these tragedies, people were forced to engage in a war against our neighbor Iran, which resulted in thousands of deaths and thousands of injured, and which exponentially multiplied the number of orphans and widows, a war from which resulted nothing more than the destruction of the infrastructure of the Iraqi people, and the destruction of social life, of the infrastructure of health, the increase in waste, the increase in crime, and the increase in corruption. It also resulted in a high level of indebtedness through acquisition of weapons that didn't need to buy and that we didn't need to acquire. The issue is Dajjal. Your Honor, I understand. Your Honor, the court here is dealing with a particular issue, the issue of Dajjal. We believe that the prosecutor exceeds the limits that are set by the rules of this court. The prosecutor represents the right of the people to express themselves. He represents the state. But here, he looks like he's becoming a party to this case. He shouldn't be a party to this case. Your Honor, I have to allow me to answer, Your Honor. These are crimes that were committed and the investigations in them are ongoing. This is not a political diatribe. We need to examine these crimes and to talk about them. No, we have to restrain ourselves to the Dajjal issue. That's what we're here for. Anyway, out of respect for the request of this honorable court, I will go straight to the Dajjal case. Today, your court will examine the crimes committed during the event of Dajjal. The accused in this case are Saddam Hussein, Uwaid, Mizhar, and Ali Dayah. Also Muhammad Azawi. We are here to try them based on Article 12 of the statute of this court, and based on the results of the investigations that were conducted in this regard, and based on the documentation that we have available to us, and also the testimony. It does seem that on the 8th of July 1982, which coincided with the month of Ramadan, the accused Saddam Hussein, who was president of the Republic of Iraq, came to the area of Dajjal, which is located about 60 miles north of Baghdad. And in the course of this visit, his motorcade was subject to fire coming from a Kalashnikov, about 12 to 15 rounds, and the rounds were coming from a garden neighboring the road leading to the city. Investigation immediately after the event indicate that the rounds were shot from a fence, and they were located behind the fence, and the empty shells were found inside the garden, which indicates that the shots were fired skywards, because if they had been fired in any other direction, the person who fired would have had to raise their gun over the fence, and in that case the empty shells would have fallen outside the fence. Subsequent to that, the accused, Saddam, made a speech in which he said that the perpetrators were no more than 3 or 4 and couldn't possibly exceed 10. And he said that they will be brought to justice, and they will confess to being in the enemy's pay. Indeed, 4 people from the Djil were arrested, and they were brought to Saddam Hussein himself, and he investigated the event themselves, and he asked his guards to separate these 4 people and to hold them in separate locations. And there is a CD here that we can show to the court, and that will tell us whether what I'm saying is true or not. Is the CD available? Where is that CD? Okay, here it is. Well, if we could have the necessary technology here, I will show it to the court. Where is the technology that we need to show the CD? And I would like to submit this CD for the record. And he ordered these 4 suspects to be separated, and a few hours after he left the city, large numbers of the armed forces came, and also cadres of the party, and they cordoned off the whole city, and helicopters came over, and they started blindly bombing the city. As a result of that, a number of civilians were killed. And then as soon as Saddam got to Baghdad, he called the security services and asked them to come to the National Council, and he ordered the accused Taha Rasin Ramadan to preside this meeting, and he asked the members present at that meeting to examine the security situation in that area and to obey the directives of Taha Yassin Ramadan, and also to obey the orders of Ibrahim al-Takriti. Barazan Ibrahim went to the Al-Radwaniya where Saddam was at that time. He went there as the person who was personally responsible for the security of Saddam. At that time, Saddam Hussein asked him to coordinate the operation in the Djil. He asked the accused Barzan. Around 7 o'clock in the afternoon, Barzan arrived to the Djil, and he used the party's office as headquarters, as a commanding office for the operation. The day after, he called Ismail al-Sheikh, who was in charge of the intelligence office, the local intelligence office there. He asked him to prepare a report in order to take it to Saddam. After that, he asked the local police to conduct raids in the houses of everyone who was suspect in the operation, and to take away their families, to take away their children, and even the elderly. The number of people who were rounded up was 638. And this number was far in excess of the capacity of the buildings available to hold them then. As a result, Barazan demanded that these people be moved to a military camp in the desert in the south of Iraq. On the third day, July 10th, and under the orders of Saddam, a commission was formed, presided by Ramadan, and the local security chiefs were members of that committee. The mission of this committee was to examine again the security situation and to arrive to conclusions or recommendations. Indeed, they did. Okay. They decided to take the arrestees, be they children or women or elderly, to the Samawa desert close to the Saudi border. The number of the people who were taken to this new venue were 399. The second recommendation was to dry the arable lands and farms that belonged to the detainees. So, based on the decision taken by Mr. Yassin Ramadan, the drying of these farms was carried out, and eyewitnesses say that he was present during the destruction and the drying of these farms. Subsequent to that, Saddam Hussein issued a decree numbered 1280 and dated 14/10/82, and under this decree the properties of all the detainees were to be forfeited and given to the state without any compensation. After the return of these responsibles for the destruction of the farms came back from Dajjal, they started to investigate and to question the detainees, whose number was 148, sir, and not 143, as the official charge claims. So we have 148 in addition to 399, the 399 that were sent to the desert camp in Samawa. So the 399 was detained, as we said. But the 148 detainees were in addition to the 399. And their age were determined not based on their birth certificate, but based on their ability to carry a weapon. So whoever was able to carry a weapon was regarded as adult enough, and they were put in special cells inside al-Hakimiyya. Also, the members of the armed forces who were from Dujayl and who were not in their units were also asked to appear before this investigative panel, except for those who were present at their military units. All these people were tortured physically and psychologically, and subsequent to that, 46 of them died during the interrogations, and we have documents to prove that. They were secretly buried, as our case proves and will prove, and subsequent to these monstrous deeds who were perpetrated by Saddam's police, and who asked Saddam to give medals, indeed, to give medals, and to reward the members of the police forces who killed these people. Saddam Hussein indeed acceded to this demand, and few days after the event of the jail, Saddam agreed in a written document to actually grant commendations for these people. On July 31st, 1982. These are documents available to us, and we'll make them part of the record. As a result of this commendation, the police forces were further spurred to engage in even more monstrous deeds. And as we said, after that, 148 people were referred to the court to be tried. And indeed, this took place. And if we look at the numbers closely, we will find that the number of those who were referred to the court were 148. And as we said before, 46 among them had already died before they were referred to the court during the interrogation. And indeed, according to the documents available to us, 96 people who were alive were referred to the court. And if we add the 46 people who died to that, we end with 142. There are 6 missing. 4 of them were executed without having anything to do with the Dajjal events at all. They were executed in the Al-Ghuraib prison. And then later they found out that these 4 people were executed without being connected in any way to the Dajjal file. And we have our names, and we could give you their names. We will provide the court with the names of these 4 people, and we will make that information part of the record. The CD, please. It's all in the CD. All this information is in the CD. Yes, we do have this. We do have this information in the CD. It's available to us. Here it is. Okay, we have the CD ready with all the documents in it. However, we seem to have a problem in the connection, in the computer connection. And I'm insisting that this CD be shown today. If you would carry on, please. So, we have two people. We don't know what happened to them. But apparently these 2 people, they were condemned to death. However, for a reason that seems to be quite beyond our understanding, and perhaps because they were among the detainees in the desert camp, they escaped execution, and their 2 names are also in the CD. So the last 2 people who were unaccounted for, we know what happened to them. So this indicates that the procedures of the court, the revolutionary court, were shameful. Most of the accused never appeared before the court, and these decisions were indeed coming to the court with the files coming from above, from the intelligence agencies and from the highest instances of the police. And of course, investigation in these cases is mentioned in quotation marks. So the investigation was almost always shameful, and these decisions were taken by the court without representation and without examination of the facts. So this is what happened. This is what happened during that court. And never were the requests of any lawyers or any counsel acceded to, nor were the fees of the lawyers mentioned. And this is what the law demands, in fact. So we have every reason to conclude that the court that was presided by Mr. Awad Bandar, and which opened its proceedings on June 14th, it reached a decision in 148 accused in 1 hour, just 1 hour. And this is not the first transaction of this court. A number of other cases also were decided upon during this same hour. And what's strange is that one day after the decision was taken by this court, a presidential decree was issued, number 700 1987. And we need to look at this decree. This decree agrees and confirms the presidential position regarding the decision of the court. In fact, Saddam Hussein in this decree agrees with the court to put to death 148 people. So the court's decision was taken on June 14th and the decree was issued on June 16th, simply 2 days afterwards. This is just a sample of what our people have endured at the hands of the investigative police. I would like to make clear to your honorable court what the detainees in the desert camp endured for 4 years. They're subjected to all manner of psychological and physical torture, inhuman treatment, and hard environment. I would like to mention one case to illustrate the difficulties and the hardships. Indeed, one of the women who were detained gave birth with the help of another detainee because there was no healthcare system and there was no healthcare facilities. After the delivery, the baby was wrapped in a daily newspaper that was left in a corner. Not to mention the children who lost their mothers and fathers and who became orphans. And because of the circumstances in which they were living, many of them died. And then, in an act of so-called generosity, Saddam Hussein released all these people. And they went back to their city. When they got there, they didn't find a home to go to, a source of income, because their farms was destroyed and their property was forfeited. And for many years they were suffering and longing for the return of their children, until they found out, after this regime was deposed, that their children had indeed been killed. The rest of the accused standing here before you, Abdullah Kadhim Ruwaid and Mizhar Abdullah Kadhim Ruwaid and Ali Dai Ali and Muhammad Azzawi Ali, all these are part of the party infrastructure who accompanied the police in order to round up the people in Dajjal, in addition to accompanying the equipment that was used to destroy the farms and to destroy the land. All these odious crimes occurred as a result of the firing of 12 to 15 rounds from a Kalashnikov. And in order for the prosecution to prove its case, in order to prove that the accused in front of you were the perpetrators of these crimes that can be qualified as crimes against humanity, such as willful murder, relocation, unlawful incarceration, expropriation. Because of these crimes, we ask that the court listens to the testimonies of the witnesses and these testimonies will be backed by documentation, and thank you very much. Well, there seems to be a problem here, Your Honor, because the prosecution did not bring here the real accused, the real perpetrators of the crimes they're alleging. These are not the actual people who perpetrated these crimes. They're talking about crimes committed by a court, but what are the people who presided over these courts? Where are the people who were involved in these actual shameful judgments that they call? And where are the people who presided over these shameful trials? And we think this is what needs to happen. We need to bring to this court the people we are actually accusing of having committed these alleged crimes, not these accused standing before you today. In addition to that, we have to tell you that the documents we have received from the prosecution, about 3,000 pages, the majority of them were just blank. And we would like to express our outrage at this tactic of the prosecution. We are here in order to exercise our right to defend the accused, and we have to be entitled to all the tools necessary for us to do our job properly. And I call upon the court to please bring to bear its authority in order to rectify this wrong.
نعم لحظة خليني أكو قرار سابق نعم حجي أكو قرار طلب من المحامي